Hello, welcome to day 119 of my art development series. If this is your first day here, my name is Angela Wren, and this is a series that I'm doing where I document my everyday art process and how I think about growing as an artist. So today I'm diving into a topic that I haven't done at least for the last 120 days of my art practice, because I know I haven't done it at all here, which I was actually just kind of reflecting on this. It's kind of crazy that I've actually documented more or less the last 120 days of my art practice process. It's quite a series, and I can't wait to start doing some comparisons between drawings that I'm doing now and then drawings that I've done in the beginning of the series. And so what you can expect to see in the near future is actually me going back into my catalog of videos and kind of pulling out some of my old references. And I want to do, a couple comparisons between what I can do now and what I was doing then, and maybe use this as like kind of a way to illustrate, how much growth can be done in such a short period of time. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about today was this idea of a self-portrait. So I try and do a self-portrait, I would say 2 or 3 times a year. Every 5-6 months, let's say 4 to 6 months, something like that. I like to do a self-portrait, and I haven't done one since the summer of last year, where I did a painting, which you can see on my Instagram, that I did a oil painting self-portrait. And so I really like doing self-portraits for a number of reasons, and I'm actually going to split, at the time I'm recording this, I've actually finished the drawing itself, but I'm going to actually split it into 3 different segments. And I'll release them, the first one will be today, then tomorrow, and then the last one will be Wednesday. So it'll go from day 119 to day 121. And so the 3 parts of them that I'm going to focus on, the first part will be about the block-in itself, and then some kind of like high-level ideas about self-portraits and how I think about them. Then the second day will be about kind of adding tone and adding value. And then there's kind of like a little twist and a little surprise that I don't want to give away, but you'll see it in the next video, tomorrow's video. And then the third day is going to be kind of about capturing likeness and this idea of, not only in self-portrait, but in portraiture in general. How do you make something that actually looks like or resembles the sitter that you're working with? So first, a few kind of high-level ideas about self-portraits as I kind of begin this block-in. So first of all, there's a lot of different ways to approach a self-portrait. The most common way, in the way that I've kind of done in the past, is that I generally take several photos of myself or have someone else take some photos of me, and then pick a photo that I like and treat it as a normal photo reference. But another way to do a self-portrait, which is actually the way that I decided to do it in this series, is to do a self-portrait from a mirror. So the way that this works, ideally you set your canvas up so that you can, I use an easel. So I set up my drawing materials, my drawing pad on an easel, and I set it up in such a way that like when I'm drawing, I only have to kind of very subtly move my head in order to see, ideally just the eyes. And I have a mirror in front of me this way, and I only have to move my eyes in order to do the drawing. And in this way, you can kind of keep your head still and keep it as the reference point for doing the drawing. And that's kind of like the best way to set it up. If you have to move your head too much, unless you're like very good about, I've done this before where I kind of mark the mirror, like maybe put a piece of masking tape on the mirror, or honestly just like smudge it quickly with your finger and then, clean it off after. But smudge it with your finger just to kind of mark, like you can put it over your eye so that like, okay, I always have to line this eye up with this point, and then I'll always be in the same position. But really the best way to do it is where you just really have to kind of move your eyes very subtly. Okay, I'm drawing. Now I'm looking at the reference. Now I'm looking at the drawing, etc., etc. And so it's kind of an interesting way to do a drawing because it kind of exists in this domain that is between a photo reference and between a working from life, in the sense that you are in some ways working from life and that you don't have anything like printed out, you don't have there's no digital distortion of the image is like existing in 3D space. But the other interesting piece of it is that it's actually compressed already into 2D space. So there's, you're just looking at the surface of the mirror. But it looks 3-dimensional, right? Because it's kind of a reflection of the light. So there's kind of this weird trick that your brain is playing between trying to understand if you're drawing from life or if you're drawing from a photograph. And it's kind of in between. And so in the video that I'm showing you today, I started by doing the block-in. And this is my normal blocking process. So you can see throughout the series, I've done many, many different portraits, and somewhere I even talk about this. I have one that I really like, actually. I don't remember the day of it. It must have been in the 80s or the 90s, where I was actually stuck in an airport and I did a drawing from imagination of a portrait. And I think that's like one of my best ones in terms of like illustrating how I think about the portrait process, which is that I use something called the Loomis method to kind of start the construction. And then I apply what are known as like Riley rhythms, or at least the Riley rhythms that I enjoy, and some of my own rhythms on top of the Loomis head. But there's one small difference when you're doing a self-portrait, or when you're doing any portrait to the extent where you want to capture the likeness, which is that you have to really focus on the big shapes of the block-in, and you have to be very accurate about your block-in stage. So the weird thing about capturing the likeness, people think, I think sometimes too much, that it's about capturing details, that you want your eye to look exactly like this eye, or that you want the nose to look exactly like the nose of the sitter. But that is true to some extent. That's not totally wrong. But there's also an aspect of this an aspect of capturing a likeness where you need the big shapes in the initial lay-ins to also look like the sitter. So if you finish your block-in stage and you kind of squint down and you're trying to see, okay, in my case, like, does this look like me? Does this look like me? If it doesn't, it's actually a bad sign, and a sign that you need to make many adjustments at that stage. It's not a great approach to finish a drawing and then try and get the likeness into it after you've finished it. You should be assessing likeness at every single stage of the drawing, and that includes the block-in and the lay-in stage, like I'm doing today. So by the end of it, I was pretty happy with how it came out, and I'm fairly confident actually about moving forward into like the next stages of adding tone. But I just wanted to kind of talk about this idea about first of all, drawing from the mirror, which I think is actually really fun, and not a way that I've done a self-portrait yet actually, or at least not for years. Like the ones that I did the painting, I did it from a photograph, and the other self-portraits that I did last year, actually all of them are from a photograph. So this idea that maybe you want to try this and kind of dabble with this a little bit, and then also just kind of talking about this idea of like the likeness in the